Jesus isn't saying don't work. He's not saying don't exercise your gifts. He's saying the way you go about it is everything. It's the way you go about it. It's what you are concerned about as you work. Crack-a-lackin', folks. How we doing? I was once at a client lunch with like these really professional clients, and I go, "What's crack-a-lackin'?" They didn't respond very well. Sometimes I'm like, business doesn't have to be so stiffy and so stuffy. Stiffy's not the word. It's stuffy. I can see how chapped my lips are in this Riverside episode, so my apologies. I've been licking my lips a lot, and it's winter, and when you lick your lips in winter, you get chapped lips. And I know this, but I don't do this. I don't do the things I know I should do. Kind of like how Paul talks about in the Bible. What a segue. Like I do the things I know I shouldn't do, and then I don't do the things that I know I should do. And so in addition to like all the things Christ tells us to do, we'll add lick your lips in the winter because it leads to chapped lips. But I kind of need them out to speak, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Listen to the podcast version if you have a thing against chapped lips. Y'all, I had a crazy busy week. We started some new things. So if y'all heard my episode from a couple of weeks ago on the corporate front, I was working for this company and they had layoffs of a whole segment. And so I started with this new corporate company that I'm super excited about because it's very much more of my niche. It's something that I'm going to be able to long-term potentially help build a lot of teams. And that to me is exciting. Some of you are like, the idea of that makes me want to puke. For me, the idea of that, it's like, let's friggin' go. The idea of just being able to pray and be selective about like this vision and this group of people that you want to run with. I think that's also exciting. And I've said this before on this podcast, and hopefully you guys know about this about me by now. I am such a believer in doing lots of things with your life. It's funny because people who know me in the entrepreneurial space, they get shocked when I say I work a corporate job. And then people who know me in the corporate space, they're not necessarily shocked I do all this stuff on the side because I'm still very like, I guess, weird. It's not like I'm different people, but I think that we live in a world that tells you it's an either or. You are either super entrepreneurial minded and creative and doing all these things, or you are someone that is like you were made for corporate America. You were made to be an employee. And we're drilled in this growing up. Like this is conditioned in us. It's like you're either going to be the employer or you're going to be the employee. And it's funny because I'm both. Like I'm an employee and I love my corporate job. And I'm also very passionate about being my own leader and my own boss in my entrepreneurial endeavors. And to that front, I just want to remind you guys, because this is on my heart. Someone was telling me last night, like, wow, Annie, it's really cool to see like God's using you as a leader. And I challenged them on that because I'm like, what makes you say that he is? And they were talking about all these external things that were happening. And I was like, but here's the thing. Everybody is a leader. Everybody's a leader. When I was in 6th grade and middle school and was basically mute because I was so shy, I was still a leader. Who was I leading? I was leading myself. Everyone is leading at least one person. And so I just want to encourage you, like whatever space you hold, entrepreneurial or corporate, or at your home, or with your friends at Bar Taco, or at a high school reunion, or in the car listening to Taylor Swift with your sisters. Am I speaking from personal experience? Yes. You're a leader. No matter where you go, no matter what external or lack of external measurements that you usually do to qualify leaders are apparent or not in your life. Like you're a leader. And so I just encourage you, lead yourself in the way that Christ wants you to be led. And just as all of us are leaders, all of us are being led by something. Oh, this was so good. And this does tie into what I want to talk about today. We're talking about Martha and Mary today. Which when I read this, I was like, whoop, we all know the story, but fresh perspective. The other day, I was listening to John Mark Comer on the Whoa, That's Good podcast. John Mark Comer, shout out. I want you on my podcast so bad. So we're just going to plant that seed there. But he was talking about how we are all following something. And a lot of people think it's like you're either following Jesus in this world or you're not. But his whole point was no, you're always following something. It's not either you're following Jesus or you're not. It's either you're following Jesus or you're following what the world tells you to be following. Social media, accomplishments, your work, a checking account, your investments, stock, your portfolio, your accomplishments, your LinkedIn status, your resume, how many likes, how many followers you get. Like you're always following something. And I was having this conversation the other day with somebody about relationships because they were like, do you ever worry if you build a relationship on God, you begin to idolize God in your relationship? And I was like, I think that's the point. I mean, because in a relationship, you're always idolizing something. If it's not God, then it's each other. If it's not God, it's sex. If it's not God, it might be physical attraction. If it's not God, it might be the security you think that person provides you with their finances or just their comforting words or their emotions or their attitude or their ability to give you children. And so we are all always idolizing something. We are all always following something. So just as we are all leaders, we are all always being led by something. And so when it comes to leadership, I think it's important to check yourself on who's leading you. And not just, I mean, of course, like if you are a longtime listener of Made to Shine or you're new, welcome. We love having you. Like this podcast is all about like sharing the love of Jesus and how the love of Jesus and the light of Jesus in our hearts through the Holy Spirit, it shines in all places that we hold. We all have a ministry. It's not just pastors and preachers. I have a ministry at my corporate sales career. I have a ministry on this podcast. You have a ministry when you're at the dinner table with your friends and your family or at the bar with your college friends watching the game. We all have a ministry. It's how we love people. And so, yes, it's like being led by Jesus, but also who are you who are the people you're surrounding yourself with that are leading you? So I say that and segue that into what we're talking about today with Mary and Martha, because when we see this story of Martha and Mary, and for those of you who don't know it, basically everyone reads this story and Jesus is at Martha and Mary's house. And Martha is preparing this massive dinner for Jesus. And Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus and just soaking in what Jesus is saying. And Martha, in typical, I'm working my butt off over here fashion, I so relate with Martha, came to Jesus and was basically like, doesn't it seem unfair that my sister just gets to sit while I am over here like working all the work on this dinner for you? And Jesus says to her, my dear Martha, I love that because Jesus doesn't talk to her with a condescending tone. He doesn't talk to her with like a belittling tone, like a you're missing the point, you stupid little girl tone. He says, my dear Martha. When people say the Bible or God or Jesus, they're misogynistic, I am like, have you read it? In this day and age, the amount of respect and love that Jesus introduced for women, I mean, he is like, I don't want to say the feminist movement because that's something completely different, but like he is so pro women. I mean, he loves his daughter so much. So he says, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all of these details." Okay, I got to pause there because when I think about when I get worried and upset, it's not over big picture. If it was over big picture, I would see Jesus in that big picture. No, it's over all of these tiny little details of this person didn't respond to me. This person was mean to me. This person like, you know what I mean? It's never big picture. It's always like these little details that if you just looked up, you would realize there's a bigger picture here. And so I just had to point that out. But he says there's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. So this passage used to tick me off because I relate with Martha. I'm a doer. I like to create. For her, she's over there like creating this massive dinner for Jesus, right? It's not like she's over there working on her next big painting she wants to launch, or creating all these Instagram reels for followers to like, or writing this book that this like new fiction book about vampires. Like, it's not like she's over there distracted making things that aren't for Jesus. Like, she's making a dinner for Jesus. And she's frustrated because Mary is just over there chilling with Jesus and not helping. And I relate to that because sometimes I'm over here and I'm like, God, I'm writing this book for you. I'm recording this podcast episode for you. You know how we do. It's like we think we're doing it for God. And I know this is a safe space, and this is why I say this, because I like, whether you realize it or not, those are the thoughts that go in your head. It's like I'm taking this seminary class to get closer with you outside of my corporate job. I am giving up my time to serve these high school students, these middle school students, and I'm exhausted and I'm tired. And now, like, and they're over there just chilling. They're not doing anything. They're not even helping. Like, don't you think that's a little unfair, God? Don't you think it's a little unfair that I'm always the one that's volunteering for you, that I'm always the one creating for you, that I'm always the one producing for you, and that Billy over there is just chilling, and what, you love him as much as me, or you're blessing him more than me? His life seems so much more peaceful than mine. I'm over here slaving away for you. Like, this is Martha, and I relate to Martha because it's hard for me to just sit. In fact, think about, like, when's the last time you just sat at the feet of Jesus? Like, just sat with your word. Maybe not even with your word, just literally sat. I said this before on a podcast, but I was super convicted a couple of months ago by reading in Matthew, like, Jesus got up early and prayed all night. And that convicted me because I was like, good night. I listen to a lot of sermons. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. I read my word. But when do I just sit and pray for more than 5 minutes, or for more than just like these segmented walkie-talkie style prayers? And when's the last time you just sat at the feet of Jesus? You know? And so I used to get triggered by this passage because I related with Martha. And I was like, Jesus is just telling you to not be like, that you're missing it because you're doing something. And that used to make me not irritated would be a great word, irritated, because I was like, well, God, what, am I just supposed to sit for my entire life? That's it? Like, I'm not supposed to do anything? And how does that make sense when I know you've given me certain gifts? Wouldn't it be a bad thing if I didn't exercise those gifts? Like, Martha has the gift of cooking, obviously. She's obviously a great cook. I mean, Mary wasn't the one that was like, I'm such a good cook, let me take over. It was Martha that was responsible for this dinner. So obviously she was given the gift of being a great cook. And so she's exercising that gift. And I used to read this passage as Jesus saying, don't do anything with your life. Just sit at my feet. That is how you should live your life. And when I reread it the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, I have missed this for so long. Because listen, it's important. He's the way he says, um, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it. Okay, I'm going to read that again. My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it. And when I read that, I was like, oh my guacamole cow, I have missed this. Jesus is not saying, Martha, don't do anything but sit for the rest of your life. Martha, he didn't say, Martha, stop cooking. He didn't say, Martha, stop preparing dinner. He didn't say, Martha, stop exercising the gifts my Father in heaven gave you to help serve me. He didn't say that. He said, you are worried and upset. And there's only one thing. I don't know what these balloons are doing. For those watching the YouTube version, please DM me. Why were there balloons in that video? What is happening? Okay. So, Martha, you are worried and upset. And Mary, or no. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it. Jesus isn't saying, don't work. He's not, faith without works is dead. Like, I think, was it Paul that said that? Jesus isn't saying don't work. He's not saying don't exercise your gifts. He's saying the way you go about it is everything. It's the way you go about it. It's what you are concerned about as you work. It's what you are concerned about as you make the dinner, as you write the book, as you lead the sales team, as you lead your family, as you start a new relationship, as you build new friendships, as you enter that new season of life, as you build that software platform, as you build that ministry, as you build that school, as you build your pilot's license, as you build your new cooking class that you want to launch. It's what you are concerned about. He wasn't priding Mary on just sitting and listening to him and belittling Martha for not doing that. No. He didn't point out, he didn't say, Martha, you're over there cooking, not spending time with me. Mary's sitting at my feet. He didn't say that. He said, Martha, you're worried and upset about all these details, and Mary's concerned about only one thing. It was independent of what they were doing. It was all about the intention behind what they were doing. And so when I read that, I was like, oh my word, God isn't saying, Annie, stop your podcast, stop writing, stop being in sales, and just sit for the rest of your life. That's not what God's saying. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, what are you concerned about as you're doing those things? When I'm recording this podcast, am I concerned about what you think of me as I'm talking? Am I concerned about it being perfect for followers and likes and shares? Am I concerned about making it sounding so smart that like I get some accolades and get cooler guests on my podcast? Am I concerned about how I look? Am I concerned? Obviously, I hope you know by now I have very chapped lips, so no. But am I concerned about what people are going to think of me? Am I concerned about the balloons that just popped up and like, oh my gosh, that wasn't very professional looking. Like, am I concerned about that? Or am I literally just concerned about showing up, humbling myself, getting out of God's way so the Spirit can speak through me? Am I concerned about using this gift God gave me as a chance to commune with Jesus? Podcasting, your gift, whether that's engineering or science or teaching or leading in some capacity or being a babysitter or a nanny, your gift is a way for you to commune with God. I think we look at our gifts. Rachel Lampa said this on the podcast not too long ago. It was so good. People look at their gifts as like almost this responsibility of theirs to carry out into the world. Y'all, a gift is a gift. I wish that's when the balloons popped up. A gift is a gift. A gift is a gift, which means God gave you a gift to get to spend more time with Him. When I do this podcast, when I talk, someone asked me the other day, like, do you write out what you're going to say? I'm like, literally, no. Sometimes I black out. I don't need, like, I did not remember telling y'all I got laid off. I was like, oh, I said that. That's interesting. Because when I do this, I feel God's joy and I feel His pleasure and I feel connected to Him. Not because this is perfect, not because I'm perfect, not because I know everything about the Bible or I'm super smart. Not because of that, but just because when I talk about God, I feel like I'm communing with God. And so God is not saying don't use your gifts. He's not telling Martha don't cook. He's saying while you are using your gifts, use it as a chance to sit at my feet. You can be doing something and still communing with God. That's what Jesus did for us. When in the Old Testament, they used to have to go to a physical temple and sacrifice a lamb to basically get rid of their sins so they could be one with God, right with God. Jesus did that for us. He was the physical temple, and his sacrifice made way for us to have his spirit so that we are one with God, which means I think it's Meod. I watch the Bible Project, y'all. I've learned so much. But Meod, it means your muchness. Give your muchness to God. It means all of you give to God in all places, which means your gift when you go out and you are an amazing soccer player, or you're an amazing teacher, or you're an amazing sales executive or a doctor, you are connecting with God through that gift. And so he's not telling Martha, stop exercising your gift, stop preparing a meal for me. What he's saying is, in the process of going about it, what are you concerned about? Are you concerned about getting to know me more as you cook? Are you concerned about communing with my heart as you exercise your gift? Or are you concerned about all these details, your time being wasted, it being unfair, it being not right? Like, what are you concerned about in the process? And I think that is so important for this day and age, especially this generation, because there's two messages going on. There's the people that are like, I am working for God, for God, for God. And then there's the people that are like, no, I'm not like that. That's egotistical. I'm not going to go like try to build myself a platform and do all these things. Like, I am going to put myself beneath God and sit at his feet and not do anything. And I'm like, y'all, neither. Like, working for God and working under God, like, you work with God. There's a book called With. It's amazing. But you're with God. So when you do the things God calls you to, it's your intention behind it. It's your intention. And so you can go and go to your career and go to your job and build that business. But what are you concerned about in the process? That is the story of Martha and Mary. And it has completely changed my perspective. Like, even after this, I'm recording a pitch for the new company I started. Like, I have to record this pitch. And it's like, okay, in the middle of that pitch, it's a minute long. It's my elevator pitch explaining our product to what would be like my grandma. It's like, okay, I'm with God in this at my executive company. I'm with God in this podcast. I'm with God in this when I have like 3 calls later around book things. I'm with God in this. It's not me working for God. It's not me working under God is God, of course. Like, but like you're with God. That's what I want to get across. I feel like we don't know how to walk with him. We're so fixated on trying to work for him. And I'm just like, y'all, the flex is not being used by God. We are obsessed with this idea of being used by God. But we qualify that by how many likes and followers and shares and views you get when you talk about God. And we've idolized being used by God when really the flex is the fact that we get to be in relationship with him. The real flex is that we are so loved by God, So, independent of outcome, independent of whether you're sitting at the feet of Jesus or you're working and creating this amazing meal, you are with God always. So, what are you concerned about as you create? I hope it convicted you as much as it convicted me. Um, and I was reading for those who want to go, and I seriously, y'all, I hope this podcast, my devotionals, whatever, it is like, do not settle for this. Please, please. Like please do not settle. I am getting like emotional talking about this, but like, do not settle for this. If this is the only word that you're getting, please get in the word for yourself. I hope if this podcast, the devotionals, it always encourages you to want to get into God's word for yourself, because it is the only thing in the world that will read you back. It is the only thing in the world that will read you back. And have the courage to take it slow. You don't have to get anything like every time. I think we read the Bible so many times, like we have to get something from it every time. That Martha and Mary revelation, like that maybe came after 30 nights of, okay, like I read the Bible today and there was nothing that jumped out at me, but I just kept reading. Okay. But Luke 10 verses 38 through 42. Please go read it for yourself. Get something that I missed and share it with me. That's the power of the fact that we all have God's Spirit, is that passages like this talk to us in so many different ways. And so I hope you learned something, but I want to learn something from you too and your spirit. And that's just a reminder, rest of your day, every single person is carrying a spirit from God, and God loves every single person so stinking much. And so you can always learn something more about God from the people you're speaking with that you would never have known had you not met that person. And I hope that this blessed you and encouraged you, reminded you that God gave you a unique light, and it is your job to shine it in this world because we need you to. That being said, if you were blessed by this message and you can think of anybody else that also needs this type of encouragement, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. It helps me out a lot and helps this message that I do believe God gave my heart to share with the world gets out. I hope you have such an amazing rest of your day.